Mommy Theresia. Hello everyone and welcome to another Rezero episode review. I did think about postponing this because, as you can listen and perhaps see by my less than healthy presentable face, I am still not fully healed, but there is just a lot that I want to talk about the Astrea episode and the Astrea family drama storyline, which I love so much but also have some problems with, and so I decided to record this video today. So let's try to bang this one out before my voice completely gives out on me, which is very close to happening because, let's be honest, I cannot make high-pitched noises in my current state. In fact, this is my current rendition of the first ending of Rezero. Oh, please don't let me die waiting for your touch. I don't know why Myth and Droid didn't call me. I sent my application. I don't know why they didn't call me back. But anyway, let's get right into the video. The episode starts with a flashback and it immediately made me giggle because it reminded me that young Wilhelm has the same voice actor as Kudo from My Happy Marriage, which was just super funny because they both have so many similarities between the two characters. So if you're watching both series as I am, I think that Venn diagram, the intersection, is probably only me, but still, for those of you who are in the know, it's a pretty funny detail. The fight between Theresia and Wilhelm plays out as the typical fight between husband and wife, with the wife giving him the silent treatment and the husband growing ever more emotional to a level that we have never seen Wilhelm as in the series before. Even in the fight against the White Whale, he wasn't as emotional as he is now. Obviously, typical fights between husband and wife do not contain swords, usually, but still, it may happen in some places. Einkel then enters the scene and he is actually so useless that he even debuffs his own father, making him be distracted and take a strike to the leg, which did not seem pleasant in any way. So Einkel is so bad that he even makes the people around him worse. And this is where we really start to see this almost pathetic, pleading side of Wilhelm that was so beautifully described in the novel, and here is beautifully acted through the voice acting. We see him even making some high-pitched noises, which obviously I cannot replicate at the time of this recording, but something that we perhaps never even imagined Wilhelm would do under any circumstance. He always seems so knightly, so gallant, so noble, and yet here he is completely desperate. Also, I love how Wilhelm tells his own son to run away because he's way over his head. Even Wilhelm knows that his son is just not it. But fortunately for them, Reinhardt arrives, and now we have the full Astrea family tree line, or at least the main ones that actually mattered for the main story. And it was at this moment, I watched this episode last week when I was with a high fever, and I don't know if it was my fever or if it was the actual screen, but the world started shaking as Reinhardt unsheathed his sword for what is, I think, the second time in the series. So this is a very important and impactful moment because we have seen how many times he tried to and he couldn't, even against very fearsome and strong opponents like Regulus. And then the stakes, the drama, the Astrea family soap opera, Wilhelm pleading on the ground, no, please, that's my Theresia, and at this moment I don't think it's his Theresia, it's probably Capella's Theresia. We never really got to know who did the revival spell, but either way, Reinhardt coldly replies, that is a fake, that is not my grandmother, and proceeds to slash her cleanly in a beautiful strike, which actually got me thinking, this dude is just unreal. With normal swords, he just blows everything up, and with his actual sword, the one meant to be used by the Sword Saint, he does a clean strike. So not only did he cleave his grandmother, he also cleaved my theory that Priscilla is a better swordsman, because I can't believe he actually used the friggin' sword and didn't. I was expecting a super flashy strike, and it was so simple and yet so effective, so elegant. Reinhardt always truly surprises every other character and me, the viewer, as well. And then they go into Theresia's backstory, and this is where I start having problems with her character. And for those of you who have seen my X-novel reviews, you know why, but for those who haven't, and to be clear, I don't know if they actually cut any material, because at some point you read so many Rezero novels, if you count the side stories, that it just starts blending in to the same thing. But either way, I do want to give a lot more context on what Big Rezero is not telling you. I want to provide more context for those of you that are curious about Theresia and Wilhelm's backstory. And don't worry, there is not any spoilers regarding this, it's just a little bit more depth into the flashbacks that we saw in this episode. So, as is shown in the anime, Theresia awoke her blessing of the Sword Saint when she was still a child. and she was already pretty strong because the blessing of the sword saint just pretty much caps out your limit of your ability with the sword. So it's an instant level boost. It's like a rare candy on steroids for those of you who have played Pokemon, and she was already pretty strong when she was a child. And her uncle and brothers did not want to send out Theresia to the battlefield because she was still a child, she was not mature enough, and she certainly didn't want to be there. Having said that, this war goes on for a long time, it is very gruesome as the X novels go into detail about, and she loses pretty much her entire close family, and I wonder just at what point do we start judging the character for it? And I say this almost knowing how harsh my words sound because she is still a child, but the thing about being a child and being a woman is that this is not the real world, this is fiction. Not only are these people in a much more brutal and medieval setting, but also she is a child, but she is incredibly strong. Her two abilities combined together are just incredibly busted. If this were a video game, Theresia would have been patched a long time ago. Theresia, even as a child, she would still probably be in the top 50 strongest characters in Rezero of all time, past, present, and future. Perhaps even top 20. I can't quite calculate the list off the top of my head, but point is, she's pretty strong, certainly more than most adult men. In the anime, they sort of skip between the point where she lost her family all the way to the end of the war where she reunites with Wilhelm, but there was a lot of story in between these 2 points, and as you can see from the X novels, this battle was very gruesome. Wilhelm also was having a lot of trouble during this time, especially because the forces of Lugunica did not have an active sword saint contributing to the battle. Because of her inactivity, she lost her family, there were multiple civilian casualties on both sides, multiple soldiers lost, there was a lot of damage to the surrounding kingdom, they were putting themselves on a very vulnerable place because if not for the blessing of the dragon, Wallachia certainly would have had invaded and perhaps would have if the war extended for longer. It was just such a bad place to be in. And she only jumped into the fray once her lover, Wilhelm, was in danger. And I say this yet again, yes, I know she was a teenager at the time, she wasn't the most mature, but I still find her character so incredibly selfish. She just ruined the lives of so many people through her inaction, and then she only jumped in to save Wilhelm, and she spent so much time doing nothing, just purely flower gazing because she was scared and didn't want to go to battle, which is totally valid, by the way, but you have a sort of responsibility to the people around you, especially when you carry such a heavy position as a sword saint. And there's definitely a balance to be struck here. I think that Reinhardt is sometimes too much of a useful tool even in his own mind. Reinhardt seems someone that is very shackled by his own duty, but I think that Theresia is sort of the complete opposite, and neither is healthy. Theresia just ditched her duties for the longest time because she wanted to flower gaze while there were civilian lives being destroyed, and it just doesn't sit right with me. And my biggest problem with this is that Theresia never really has a redemption moment of any kind. And some of you may say that her being selfish and her being flawed is part of her character, to which I agree 100%, but then my problem becomes with the presentation, because Theresia never really has this moment of redemption, of remorse, where she thinks back or where she tries to internalize some lesson that she learned or pass on this knowledge or do something better to make up for the mistakes that she did and the inaction that she had during the beginning of the war. She never really has this moment. She sort of just spent her time flower gazing, almost trying not to be bothered by the war going on around her, and then she has this heroic moment and it's celebrated as a good thing, but she never really has that character progression that I hope that she did. Both in the anime and in the novels, Theresia is always presented as this very feminine, sensitive, precious character that is burdened by her duty until she is relieved of it by Wilhelm, which I just don't think is the right presentation for the actions her character did. And I know this may be my own flaws coming through, and this goes against the consensus of the Rezero community. However, for these videos, you guys know I always give it to you raw. I give my honest thoughts, even if they go against a considered good opinion, and so I just think that Theresia never sat right with me. I can't empathize with her character because I empathize with the other people she let down more. I think an almost easy fix you could have for this storyline is if instead of Theresia not wanting to go herself, she was perhaps stopped by some noble or some king, which would even be in character because we see that the kings of Lugunica are very kind people and would be prone to making those sort of emotional judgments that a very ruthless king would not do. I think if there was something stopping her from going into the battlefield, it would sort of give her an out, and it would make her heroic moment even more heroic because it would be a rebellious one as well. She would be fighting for her man and for her kingdom despite the wishes of the nobles or the king or whatever. I think giving her some sort of villainous authority figure, even if it wasn't necessarily a named character, just some higher power or whatever, just to give her an out, to give her an excuse not to be or look as selfish of a character. I think that would improve it a lot, but nevertheless, it is what it is. And speaking of selfish, there is also a detail regarding Wilhelm. The reason he got so strong enough to defeat the Sword Saint was because he did a 2-year sabbatical to train with the sword. But he did that sabbatical during the war, so he ditched his comrades in arms, he ditched the kingdom that he was fighting for, all to get stronger for the woman he loves, which is just lovely and very romantic. But if you ever speak to someone in the military, you'll know just how much of a no-no this would be. And it's just, both of them are profoundly selfish characters that in many ways cover up each other's flaws and are romanticized under this guise of love. And honestly, I think we're going full circle now. I think that I'm on Heinkel's side. The dude grew up with these incredibly selfish parents and this incredibly heavy burden of expectations. I think Heinkel is actually the good guy now. I'm rooting for him. Just kidding, I would never root for Heinkel, but I can empathize with him just a little bit more. Anyway, I'm not sponsored, I wish, but you can go and read X2 if you want to know more about the backstory of Wilhelm and Theresia and maybe come up with your own conclusion and your own thoughts about these characters. And for those of you who are hesitant, you do not need to read or buy any of the other Rezero light novels. This one pretty much works as a standalone book. You don't even need to read X1, which is about Crucian fairies and has very little to do with this one. So just go out there and see for yourself if I'm being too harsh with Theresia or if she does deserve a good roast. Finally, and I was not expecting them to do this, but there was a small part of me that was hoping they did, was in the final scene in the throne room where Wilhelm kisses Theresia. They could have put a lot of Easter egg characters in there that would have been so cool for the future story and for people that read the side stories and all that, but oh well, I get why they focused on Wilhelm and Theresia. It was an Astrea focused episode, but still, some Easter eggs would have been pretty cool. Then we see another flashback where we see that middle-aged Wilhelm did not age particularly well, contrasting with his wife, who is looking like a whole meal. That's all I'm going to say. Listen, if you guys watch my videos, you know by now, mummy characters with large breasts, listen, you have my attention. Also, young Heinkel looks like a presentable character, which gives even more proof to my theory that it was parenting that broke him. I'm slowly empathizing with Heinkel the more time goes on. We also see in the flashback that Theresia literally cut Wilhelm so he wouldn't come after her because she can now more easily control her blessing and when it activates or does not activate. And I thought initially when I read this was some sort of sparring match, but no, she's just a complete psycho right there in the middle of the living room. See, Heinkel is getting more and more justified by the episode. And then we get the shocking reveal that while Big Tuna was in fact very scary, for those of us who have missed a white whale from season 1, it was quite a spectacle to see it again, but Pandora is here to ruin the day. And I like how Theresia just instinctively knows she's a threat that must be eliminated. And also, maybe I'm misremembering, but Pandora in this season seems younger than the one from season 2. And maybe I'm just misremembering, maybe it's just a difference in animation, which was more noticeable in the first few episodes of season 3, but here it really stood out to me. And then in the final emotional moment, Wilhelm just has the biggest case of meandering with his words that we've ever seen. He's saying all types of stuff like, I've waited so long to say this, and I'm bad with words, and bro, just say it, you have a few seconds before she goes, just say it. We also get a bit of cut content. I don't know if this was a monologue or if she said it out loud, but I'm pretty sure in the novel, Theresia just praised Wilhelm's good old looks, which, hey, he looks like quite a hot grandfather if I do say so myself. And then as Theresia finally turns to dust, we get the thing she would hate the most. The 3 generations of Astrea just fighting with each other. Wilhelm asks Reinhardt if he regrets it, to which he replies no. And Wilhelm logically understands that Reinhardt is right, but he cannot emotionally accept it. And this is so sad because we get 3 generations of trauma just clashing with each other, with Heinkel being perhaps a bit too spoiled, Reinhardt having way too much on his shoulders, even more perhaps than he can bear, and Wilhelm who can't help but scapegoat his own grandson for his own flaws and things that were unavoidable. This is particularly ironic because while Reinhardt is correct, he has a lot of trouble expressing himself and wording things in a way that makes it emotionally connect with other people. Apparently, there's no blessing for that one. And this is ironic because it's the exact same problem that young Wilhelm had, perhaps still has to this day. And so it's so tough from an outsider looking in, seeing this very real family clash where grandfather and grandson have so much in common, and yet precisely because of that, they cannot connect. Overall, I love this episode. I absolutely love the Astrea family soap opera. It's one of my favorite recurring storylines in Rezero. I love the drama. I love the emotional moments. This episode did not have as gorgeous animation as the previous one, but to be quite honest, it didn't need to. The fights aren't particularly engaging even in the novel. The main fight itself is pretty much a one-hit KO, so there's not much to animate there. The highlight of this episode and this storyline is the voice acting, the emotions, the drama, and in that aspect I think they nailed it. Despite all of the problems that I did highlight with Theresia, I just wanted to get this out of my chest because I know not all people read the X stories, and so I just wanted to get it out because it's something that annoys me to no end. But still, I will say I don't necessarily hate Theresia's character. In fact, in scope of the main story, she's mostly a background piece that sort of fits the puzzle that is the Astrea family storyline, mainly Reinhardt and Wilhelm. So I don't necessarily hate her character, but I do have a problem with how she is portrayed and how a lot of the community sees her. Like I said, I have a huge spot for the Astrea family. I was looking forward to this episode ever since season 3 was announced. I absolutely loved this one, and definitely let me know in the comments, because whenever I give some spicy takes, usually you guys roast me back, and that's perfectly fine. Just let me know what you thought of this episode, what you think of Theresia and her storyline, and what do you think of the drama between Wilhelm and Reinhardt. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully with a better voice, more equipped to be recording videos. I still wonder why Myth and Roy didn't call me. I'm still bitter about that one. But either way, be sure to follow me, links in the description, like, subscribe, and ciao!